Rule 12. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Mikhaila was a sunny child and very easy to get along with. One day when she was about 14 months old, I took her along with Tammy and her grandparents to Cape Cod, when we lived in Boston. When we got there, Tammy and her mom and dad walked ahead, and left me with Mikhaila in the car. We were in the front seat. She was lying there in the sun, babbling away. I leaned over to hear what she was saying. Happy, 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 happy. That's what she was like. When she turned 6, however, she started to get mopey. It was hard to get her out of bed in the morning. She put on her clothes very slowly. When we walked somewhere, she lagged behind. She complained that her feet hurt and that her shoes didn't fit. We bought her 10 different pairs, but it didn't help. She went to school, and held her head up, and behaved properly. But when she came home, and saw her mom, she would break into tears. We had recently moved from Boston to Toronto, and attributed these changes to the stress of the move. But it didn't get better. Mikhaila began to walk up and down stairs one step at a time. She began to move like someone much older. She complained if you held her hand. One time, much later, she asked me, "Dad, when you played this little piggy with me when I was little, was it supposed to hurt?" Things you learn too late. A physician at our local medical clinic told us, sometimes children have growing pains. They're normal. But you could think about taking her to see a physiotherapist. So, we did. The physiotherapist tried to rotate Mikhaila's heel. It didn't move. That was not good. The physio told us, "Your daughter has juvenile rheumatoid arthritis." This was not what we wanted to hear. We did not like that physiotherapist. We went back to the medical clinic. Another physician there told us to take Mikhaila to the hospital for sick children. The doctor said, "Take her to the emergency room. That way, you will be able to see a rheumatologist quickly." Mikhaila had arthritis, all right. The physio, bearer of unwelcome news, was correct. 37 affected joints. Severe polyarticular juvenile idiopathic arthritis, J. Cause? Unknown. Prognosis? Multiple early joint replacements. What sort of God would make a world where such a thing could happen, at all, much less to an innocent and happy little girl? It's a question of absolutely fundamental import for believer and non-believer alike. It's an issue addressed, as are so many difficult matters, in the Brothers Karamazov, the great novel by Dostoevsky we began to discuss in Rule 7. Dostoevsky expresses his doubts about the propriety of being through the character of Ivan who, if you remember, is the articulate, handsome, sophisticated brother, and greatest adversary, of the monastic novitiate. Elisha. It's not God I don't accept. Understand this, says Ivan. I do not accept the world that he created, this world of God's, and cannot agree with it. I had realized something relevant to this, years before, about 3-year-old Julian, remember him, smiley face. I thought, I love my son. He's 3, and cute and little and comical. But I am also afraid for him, because he could be hurt. If I had the power to change that, what might I do? I thought, he could be 20 feet tall instead of 40 inches. Nobody could push him over then. He could be made of titanium, instead of flesh and bone. Then, if some brat bounced a toy truck off his noggin, he wouldn't care. He could have a computer-enhanced brain. And even if he was damaged, somehow, his parts could be immediately replaced. Problem solved. But no, not problem solved, and not just because such things are currently impossible. Artificially fortifying Julian would have been the same as destroying him. Instead of his little 3-year-old self, he would be a cold, steel-hard robot. That wouldn't be Julian. It would be a monster. I came to realize through such thoughts that what can be truly loved about a person is inseparable from their limitations. Julian wouldn't have been little and cute and lovable if he wasn't also prone to illness, and loss, and pain, and anxiety. Since I loved him a lot, I decided that he was all right the way he was, despite his fragility. It's been harder with my daughter. As her disease progressed, I began to piggyback her around, not on my shoulders, when we went for walks. She started taking oral naproxen and methotrexate, the latter a powerful chemotherapy agent. She had a number of cortisol injections, wrists, shoulders, ankles, elbows, knees, hips, fingers, toes and tendons, all under general anesthetic. This helped temporarily, but her decline continued. One day Tammy took Mikhaila to the zoo. She pushed her around in a wheelchair. That was not a good day. Her rheumatologist suggested prednisone, a corticosteroid, long used to fight inflammation. But prednisone has many side effects, not the least of which is severe facial swelling. It wasn't clear that this was better than the arthritis, not for a little girl. Fortunately, if that is the right word, the rheumatologist told us of a new drug. It had been used previously, but only on adults. So Mikhaila became the first Canadian child to receive etanercept, a biological specifically designed for autoimmune diseases. Tammy accidentally administered 10 times the recommended dose the first few injections. Poof! Mikhaila was fixed. A few weeks after the trip to the zoo, she was zipping around, playing Little League soccer. Tammy spent all summer just watching her run. The rheumatologist had some more unpleasant things to say the next September, when Mikhaila started grade 11. An MRI revealed joint deterioration at the hip. She told Mikhaila, "Your hip will have to be replaced before you turn 30. Perhaps the damage had been done before the etanercept worked its miracle? We didn't know. It was ominous news. One day, a few weeks after, Mikhaila was playing ball hockey in her high school gym. Her hip locked up. She had to hobble off the court. It started to hurt more and more. The rheumatologist said, "Some of your femur appears to be dead. You don't need a hip replacement when you're 30. You need one now." As I sat with my client as she discussed her husband's advancing illness, we discussed the fragility of life, the catastrophe of existence, and the sense of nihilism evoked by the specter of death. I started with my thoughts about my son. She had asked, like everyone in her situation, "Why my husband? Why me? Why this?" My realization of the tight interlinking between vulnerability and being was the best answer I had for her. I told her an old Jewish story, which I believe is part of the commentary on the Torah. It begins with a question, structured like a Zen koan. Imagine a being who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. What does such a being lack? The answer? Limitation. If you are already everything, everywhere, always, there is nowhere to go and nothing to be. Everything that could be already is, and everything that could happen already has. And it is for this reason, so the story goes, that God created man. No limitation, no story. No story, no being. That idea has helped me deal with the terrible fragility of being. It helped my client, too. I don't want to overstate the significance of this. I don't want to claim that this somehow makes it all okay. She still faced the cancer afflicting her husband, just as I still faced my daughter's terrible illness. But there's something to be said for recognizing that existence and limitation are inextricably linked. Then her right ankle disintegrated. Her doctors wanted to fuse the large affected bones into one piece. But that would have caused the other, smaller bones in her foot now facing additional pressure to deteriorate. That's not so intolerable, perhaps, when you're 80, although it's no picnic then either. But it's no solution when you're in your teens. We insisted upon an artificial replacement, although the technology was new. There was a 3-year waiting list. This was simply not manageable. The damaged ankle produced much more pain than her previously failing hip. One bad night she became erratic and illogical. I couldn't calm her down. I knew she was at her breaking point. To call that stressful is to say almost nothing. We spent weeks and then months desperately investigating all sorts of replacement devices, trying to assess their suitability. We looked everywhere for quicker surgery: India, China, Spain, the UK, Costa Rica, Florida. We contacted the Ontario Provincial Ministry of Health. They were very helpful. They located a specialist across the country, in Vancouver. Mikhaila's ankle was replaced in November. Post-surgery, she was in absolute agony. Her foot was mispositioned. The cast was compressing skin against bone. The clinic was unwilling to give her enough OxyContin to control her pain. She had built up a high level of tolerance because of her previous use. When she returned home, in less pain, Mikhaila started to taper off the opiates. She hated OxyContin, despite its evident utility. She said it turned her life gray. Perhaps that was a good thing, under the circumstances. She stopped using it as soon as possible. She suffered through withdrawal for months, with night sweating and formication, the sensation of ants crawling upside down under her skin. She became unable to experience any pleasure. That was another effect of opiate withdrawal. During much of this period, we were overwhelmed. The demands of everyday life don't stop, just because you have been laid low by a catastrophe. Everything that you always do still has to be done. So how do you manage? Here are some things we learned. Set aside some time to talk and to think about the illness or other crisis and how it should be managed every day. Do not talk or think about it otherwise. If you do not limit its effect, you will become exhausted, and everything will spiral into the ground. This is not helpful. Conserve your strength. You're in a war, not a battle, and a war is composed of many battles. You must stay functional through all of them. When worries associated with the crisis arise, at other times, remind yourself that you will think them through, during the scheduled period. This usually works. The parts of your brain that generate anxiety are more interested in the fact that there is a plan than in the details of the plan. Don't schedule your time to think in the evening or at night. Then you won't be able to sleep. If you can't sleep, then everything will go rapidly downhill. Shift the unit of time you use to frame your life. When the sun is shining, and times are good, and the crops are bountiful, you can make your plans for the next month, and the next year, and the next 5 years. You can even dream a decade ahead. But you can't do that when your leg is clamped firmly in a crocodile's jaws. Sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof, that is Matthew 6:34. It is often interpreted as live in the present, without a care for tomorrow. This is not what it means. That injunction must be interpreted in The context of the Sermon on the Mount, of which it is an integral part. That sermon distills the 10 thou shalt nots of the commandments of Moses into a single prescriptive thou shalt. Wish upon a star, and then act properly, in accordance with that aim. Once you are aligned with the heavens, you can concentrate on the day. Be careful. Put the things you can control in order. Repair what is in disorder, and make what is already good better. It is possible that you can manage, if you are careful. People are very tough. People can survive through much pain and loss. But to persevere they must see the good in being. If they lose that, they are truly lost. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Dogs are like people. They are the friends and allies of human beings. They are social, hierarchical, and domesticated. They are happy at the bottom of the family pyramid. They pay for the attention they receive with loyalty, admiration, and love. Dogs are great. Cats, however, are their own creatures. They aren't social or hierarchical, except in passing. They are only semi-domesticated. They don't do tricks. They are friendly on their own terms. Dogs have been tamed, but cats have made a decision. They appear willing to interact with people, for some strange reasons of their own. To me, cats are a manifestation of nature, of being, in an almost pure form. Furthermore, they are a form of being that looks at human beings and approves. When you meet a cat on a street, many things can happen. If I see a cat at a distance, for example, the evil part of me wants to startle it with a loud sound front teeth over bottom lip. That will make a nervous cat puff up its fur and stand sideways so it looks larger. Maybe I shouldn't laugh at cats, but it's hard to resist. The fact that they can be startled is one of the best things about them, along with the fact that they are instantly disgruntled and embarrassed by their overreaction. But when I have myself under proper control, I'll bend down, and call the cat over, so I can pet it. Sometimes, it will run away. Sometimes, it will ignore me completely, because it's a cat. But sometimes the cat will come over to me, push its head against my waiting hand, and be pleased about it. Sometimes it will even roll over, and arch its back against the dusty concrete, although cats positioned in that manner will often bite and claw even a friendly hand. Across the street on which I live is a cat named Ginger. Ginger is a Siamese, a beautiful cat, very calm and self-possessed. She is low in the Big 5 personality trait of neuroticism, which is an index of anxiety, fear, and emotional pain. Ginger is not at all bothered by dogs. Our dog, Sicko, is her friend. Sometimes when you call her, sometimes of her own accord, Ginger will trot across the street, tail held high, with a little kink at the end. Then she will roll on her back in front of Sicko, who wags his tail happily as a consequence. Afterward, if she feels like it, she might come visit you, for a half a minute. It's a nice break. It's a little extra light, on a good day, and a tiny respite, on a bad day. If you pay careful attention, even on a bad day, you may be fortunate enough to be confronted with small opportunities of just that sort. Maybe you will see a little girl dancing on the street because she is all dressed up in a ballet costume. Maybe you will have a particularly good cup of coffee in a cafe that cares about their customers. Maybe you can steal 10 or 20 minutes to do some little ridiculous thing that distracts you or reminds you that you can laugh at the absurdity of existence. Personally, I like to watch a Simpsons episode at 1.5 times regular speed. All the laughs, 2/3 the time. And maybe when you are going for a walk and your head is spinning, a cat will show up, and if you pay attention to it, then you will get a reminder for just 15 seconds that the wonder of being might make up for the ineradicable suffering that accompanies it. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. P.S. Soon after I wrote this chapter, Mikhaila's surgeon told her that her artificial ankle would have to be removed, and her ankle fused. Amputation waited down that road. She had been in pain for 8 years, since the replacement surgery, and her mobility remained significantly impaired, although both were much better than before. 4 days later she happened upon a new physiotherapist. He was a large, powerful, attentive person. He had specialized in ankle treatment in the UK, in London. He placed his hands around her ankle and compressed it for 40 seconds, while Mikhaila moved her foot back and forth. A mispositioned bone slipped back where it belonged. Her pain disappeared. She never cries in front of medical personnel, but she burst into tears. Her knee straightened up. Now she can walk long distances, and traipse around in her bare feet. The calf muscle on her damaged leg is growing back. She has much more flexion in the artificial joint. This year, she got married and had a baby girl, Elizabeth, named after my wife's departed mother. Things are good. For now.